You gonna take this long? All right, everyone. How are you, Miss Roxana Damas? Did I say that right, Miss Damas?
You did. You did. Hi, Gail.
How you doing? Former UN Empower Women champion, human rights advocate, go girl, entrepreneur, founder of We Global Live. That's We with a double E, Global Live, singer and songwriter. See, this is up my alley, and we shout out to Stephanie Mark for bringing her on in. So I told you I was going to put you on the spot. We're going to start off with some music. We're ready for you. Go ahead, Roxanne. Go.
Already. Let's do it. El universo dio al mundo unas mujeres de valor que se enfrentan a la vida con su voz, llevan su frente en alto y el pueblo en el corazón y en el canto de sus almas una liberación. Mujeres de fuego y de pasión que llevan luz al mundo, que en sus cuerpos hay amor para borrar el dolor. And I'll stop there, Gail, because if not, I'll keep going. And I know we're presenting, but that song I wrote for Nobel Peace Laureate Rigoberta Menchú a couple years back, and it means women of fire and passion that take love and light around the world. So that's for you, Gail, because you've been holding this up, and for all the ladies in this conference today.
Well, okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. You have an English song for us too?
I do. Well, this one, I'm seeing. Okay, here we go. This one's actually a domestic violence song. So I did it after working with some very critical cases. So here we go.
I tell you, it must be that I need to look at something, because I was just talking to someone else that I went through that much earlier, the mental side. So maybe God is trying to tell me I need to go help some folks again. Okay, let's try.
Here we go. So let's talk about it. I leave the world today, but I'm not gone forever. For all the women of courage that will silence no more. Remember me every time a woman dies. Remember me. Don't you let that woman die. Remember me. Don't let me die in vain. Not as happy as I'd like to sing a song to start us off.
No, but that's. I mean, this is in alignment with where we're going. Okay, yes. From the root, starting from the inside out. Well, let's get down to business. Roxana, give us a little idea. We can go into the UN and all of that, but we're more interested in you, the woman, because that's where women draw their strength from. Being inspired by the human being themselves, not the extension of what they do. Okay? Tell us about Roxana. Who is she?
Well, I'm definitely a dedicated person to seeing change in the world. There's many things, the art, the music, being an entrepreneur and being engaged. But one thing that drives me is to see the change in our communities, and especially in women around the world. And matter of fact, since you got me started in music, and it wasn't planned, but it's all in divine order, right? Music, I'll have to say, had a huge reason to pushing me forward in getting involved in women's issues and actually majoring in women and gender studies. There were many other things I had witnessed. My parents are both from El Salvador. They had experienced what it was to have a civil war. I witnessed people immigrating to the US. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and I did 12 trips by road from San Francisco to El Salvador, and I got to witness so much. But when I got to music, it kind of all got together at some point, and especially I was in the Latin market, and I felt that my Americanized ways of being more vocal, being more independent, just kind of the way women use the stage and how they presented themselves to the world was a lot different than what was expected to me when I was singing in Spanish. And so that made me see, and I witnessed a lot of abuse towards women in the entertainment, like more the nightclub settings and stuff like that. And I just couldn't really bear to see that. One day in particular, I'm never going to forget that someone who was also a fellow performer, it was my turn to sing, and all of a sudden I'm on stage, I'm doing my thing, and I see this man just reach over my arm and pull the hair of a woman that's right in front of me. And that was his girlfriend. I didn't know at the time, but he was so upset of something that she was doing at that moment on the stage, and no one said anything. And I remember just going backstage and talking to her and got her some help. She eventually left this person, but it stuck with me, and a few other things that I won't mention here today, but I'll say it really opened this space where I had to learn to negotiate in the middle of the men. I was sometimes the only female there. I started singing really young, and so I was exposed to a lot in that space. And I just remember going backstage and kind of study, because I was also in college, and just decided to, this is something that I really need to talk about. What does it mean to be a woman who's a performer? What does it mean to speak up and know about my rights? And the more I learned about it and the more things I saw, it was so important for me to go there. So that's how I ended up doing women and gender studies. At least it's one of the reasons I was there. And of course, dealing with the abuse. So the title for today was Disrupting and Restructuring Women's Global Leadership from the Root of Our Resilient and Thriving Truth. There is so much truth, and there's so much that's going on in the world for women, things that we've experienced throughout generations. And we really need to go to that root and pull out of that some of the strength that we need to really change what's coming in the future. That's why I'm so excited about today, because you're looking at new blueprints. What things can we do differently? And one thing that I really didn't like about the women's movement at the time, the people that were supporting me and teaching me about just the women's movement, is that they ignored the entertainment, the women in entertainment. And I was like, you have no idea how much women in entertainment need the women's movement, because they're overexposed, but they're also the most visible, and we need them to have the right voice and the right language to empower the future generations. So that's at least a gist of where I started.
It's funny. I was speaking to a gentleman earlier, an indigenous gentleman earlier, who was talking about future generations, that word, future generations. And he made the statement, it's now. He said, it's now. And I kept saying future. He said, no, it's now. And I got what he was saying. As someone, I think the heavens must have meant for you and I to talk, because I've been in the United Nations infrastructure, the music industry, tech development, like you have, gender studies, yes. For a while. What I want to say about women, and this is, so we're doing a blueprint, we're doing a blueprint together with the 3 Peacemakers. And, as I shared with David, we had already started doing this blueprint some time ago, okay? And to join together with him and Sherry and Mesfin was great, because we can now take all of our everything and put it together as one, okay? Right. But here's the thing. I'm going to get really, you ready to get real? Because I see that you and I can get really real with each other.
Let's do this. Yes.
Yes. The deal is that, and I've been, as I said, I told someone today, I'm going to set myself up to just learn today. Not a space of talking about what I know, but to learn. Okay. The issue, I have, I'm going to say, shout out to my friend Mish in Mexico. We sometimes agree to disagree. And the thing is that I feel like women, on one side, it's how we feel about ourselves inside. See, we always want to talk about what's needed.
Right.
But before we get to what is needed, we've got to look at what we're dealing with on the inside of us, where we come from, how we've grown up, and really look at it for what it is. Now, there was another young lady who came from parents that she said something else powerful, that women are, and your grandmother, my mother, your mother as well, Roxanne, all of our mothers, they were back in the day independent, but not aware of their potential. And when she said that today, I didn't know how to word it, but that's how all of us, even now, even if they're 6 years old to 98 years old, we're walking around with this, and we want to blame men for it. That's not the deal. Women are complicated creatures, and don't movements are great, but women also lie. They'll say that a man affected them when they didn't. So then we'll say that, oh, you're shaming that woman. No, there are some women out there, and a lot of women. Oh, and you know this in the music industry. Oh, he's good looking. I'm gonna get him, even though you know he's married, you know he's got kids. Tell me I'm wrong, Roxana.
I can't tell you you're wrong. That's facts, and there's a lot to that.
Okay. You go ahead, please. I really want to.
You know, not just in the music industry, but and you know, obviously it happens there. But I think in every space. One thing that I've done in the last 5 years is I was contracted to be the violence prevention and domestic violence expert for children and family services in the region that I live, and it covered like about 7 cities, and I had people from all over the world here in the Bay Area in California. We just are exposed to so much, and one thing that always caught my attention is that we were always so quick to judge the male in the situations because that's what we've been trained in the movement. But a lot of times it was the female that was aggressor, and I'm not gonna, and I will say it's the least number. It's still not as high, obviously, but there are situations where they were either mutual aggressors or the main aggressors, and in some cases it was just darn awful. And eventually, you had men almost losing their jobs to some of these things, but people didn't know how to really address the issue and how to handle it. We had cases where I know that women were pulling knives on their husbands, and they had mental health issues, or they were on drugs, and their violence usually had to do more with that than it had to do with just like general main aggression. But when it came to males, if we ever mentioned that there was a knife involved, the man would be detained immediately, but the women were still there and they were causing a lot of damage. And so I'm not going to say that this is the standard or the main thing that happens, but it's enough to where it's troubling. And we need to see where we're having, why we're presenting in this ways. And in the music industry, you just said it, there's a lot going on. Sometimes, yes, more times I've seen women being abused, but I also think we also have to know how we step into certain spaces and really be fearless and put your boundaries up. I was 16 years old when I started in the music industry. My parents trusted me enough to be there, but it was not easy. But I had to learn how to do that. Now, it's not the same for everyone. I understand that. But there has been, I think, a lot I've seen that's not that's not really recognized. And from the women's movement perspective, we do have to see there is some abuse. And right now with technology, I'm seeing it a lot with the teens. The boys think it's always just, oh, she's just texting me. Yeah, after you've been texting someone 100 times, there's aggression there too.
Yeah, and the passive. So we just want to, before we go on, Sophia Kianni, is that correct, Sophia?
Yeah, Sophia Kianni.
Hi, Sophia.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Okay, so before we go any further, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself, Sophia?
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Sophia Kianni. I'm an 18-year-old climate activist. I'm the founder and executive director of Climate Cardinals, which is an international youth-led nonprofit working to make climate education more accessible to non-English speakers. And I'm also the youngest member on the United Nations Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change.
Wow, that's amazing. So you must know Shea Bastida.
Yeah, we work in the same circles.
Yeah, Shea is a good friend, and Alexandra too.
Yeah, they're both awesome.
Yes. So, so going back to this, it has been hard for all of us, I believe. Very hard for all of us. And what we were talking about, Sophia, was the part that women play. Okay, because we always get on here and say women protecting women, women in partnership with each other. But I wanted to, before we went there, I wanted to flip it and have women be accountable to themselves and with each other. Because you see, before we can get to that next level, we need to look, because we don't, see, here's the deal. We don't really support each other. That is a myth, as you said, Roxanne. Now, it also depends the mindset that you're coming from. Mm-hmm. There was a woman on earlier that said you have to look within. When you look within and look at what you're thinking, you can attract it. So, Sophia, I would love to get your thought process before we go back to Roxana on how you see women and how you see women engaging, especially in the climate area.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I think women are the leaders of the climate movement in a lot of aspects. I mean, when you're looking at Greta Thunberg, looking at all of the prolific leaders that have come out of the climate movement recently, it really does tend to be young women of color, which I think is absolutely amazing, especially because climate change actually disproportionately affects women and people of color. So it actually makes a lot of sense for young women, like women in general, to be the leaders in this movement. And furthermore, I mean, in a personal and professional capacity, I'm always looking to uplift women within the UN. We always really try and have gender balance or gender imbalance in the favor of women, just because we know that sometimes it's rare to see women in positions of leadership, unfortunately, which is part of the reason why I think that in the United States, especially, people have been so excited by the fact that Kamala Harris is now going to be vice president, because it's so great for us to see women in positions of power that we usually haven't seen before.
Yeah, I have my thoughts about that one. About Kamala. I love Kamala, but I have some thoughts that I'm going to keep to myself before I get in trouble. But what I would say is this. Well, one thing I'm glad to see, because Sophie, I was sharing. All of us are kind of part of the UN here, and are you like a staff person?
I'm on their new advisory group on climate change, so I'm serving a 2-year term.
Okay, so not like staff.
No.
Yeah, so I love it when we're not staff. Like I was telling Roxana, because when you're staff, we have to we have to usually get approval to speak and to talk about things online and stuff like that. I've been able to get around it, but not always. But what I wanted to share was that, well, not even share, ask you guys the question, because I'm not here to share. Roxanne, you were just talking about the music industry, okay? What do you see is needed, before we go to the domestic violence stuff, okay? What do you see is needed among the women in the music industry? Because I want to ask you from two sides. On one side, seems to be the side of, I'm going to beat her out to get where I want to go.
Okay.
Okay. And then on the other side is that woman who's coming in to really befriend other women and bring them together and work together. And she gets a rude awakening sometimes. Now the industry, no, but the industry is trying to change right now. And then we have courageous women like the woman who was fired from the Grammys for revealing everything that was going on. When you look at all those three sides, Roxana, what do you think is missing to bridge the gap of that?
Well, I'm going to say that this is probably missing not just in the music industry, because I think that's part of the conversations we've been having at We Global, which is, do we really support each other? I mean, I have your back, but do I really? And this is what we're sharing here. And I think that happens in the industry, but it happens also in any space where there's communities that have been oppressed. And in this case, women in the music industry, that's what that is, right? And part of it is the perceptions that we have about what women in entertainment can or cannot do. I think in general, when it comes to media and visibility, a lot of the women are in the forefront as entertainers, as maybe the creators. You may have some people in the back end, but not in the decision-making table. So I think it's been changing throughout the years, but we need more of that. And I think it goes back to when we even talk about sponsors in corporate settings. It's no different here in the music. The other thing is really actively being allies, but you just said, you have the women that don't support. And I felt the hate many times, whether it's in music or in other places. I'm like, I come in and I just want to help, but you have someone that you even trusted or even gave a space to who really turns around and backstabs you. So that's really part of the conversation I wanted to talk about today, is how do we start deconstructing some of these oppressed ideals that we have and that we accept that this is the only way that we know how to become successful. I think I read that recently this week, and I wish I had the quote here for you today, but it had something to do with when a community is oppressed, and especially when it had been around women, we learned in many ways to manipulate the situation in order to get ahead. That mentality really has to change, but we have to create those spaces collectively, like you have Sophia here doing the climate change work, and then you're talking here about the UN work and what you're doing here. We really need to be that voice, and we need to have action behind it. A lot of it is a lot of talk. And I feel like that's across the board, not just in the music industry. And of course, when you get to the music industry, there's so much money, there's so much influence from all these different places. And what we as society really look at, what is a public discourse acceptable for women to do? I mean, I heard that, I think Jennifer Lopez wanted to talk about children in cages, and that she got a lot of pushback. So what she did is she did that thing on the Super Bowl. And I guess there was a lot of tension behind that. But someone at her level of career, she can do that. If someone else that comes in with less support, less sponsors, maybe they wouldn't be able to do such of those things. So it's really understanding like who's putting the money in there, how can we get to be women at the decision table, the policy impact, the tech impact that we're having now. I was at a Grammy University project that they had here in the Bay Area, and they really were talking about how tech and policy were coming together for music. I never thought that all my worlds were going to come together until I walked in there. But you're talking about a lot of different things. I mean, we have to have messages about climate change in our music and our social responsibility projects as entertainers. And also, you need to be involved in some of that policy behind the scenes, because it is impacting a lot of our daily lives, not just what we listen. But women, I think, sometimes shy away from those conversations. And it's also been hard for them to keep going up that scale. But I think we have to create our own lane, which is part of what I really wanted to say today. Is like, we have to create our own lane. We have to create our own spaces. It doesn't matter what industry we're in.
Wow. Thank you, Roxanne. Well, Miss Sophia, guess who's next?
Is there anything in particular you'd like me to respond to?
Yeah, just your thoughts on, women in the climate space. I'm loving that I'm seeing it increasing, okay? But I want to know your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I definitely think that women in the climate movement in leadership positions is increasing, but I'm sure that there is always going to be more opportunities where there should be more women, especially because I think that in a lot of cases, this idea that we have of an environmentalist is like this older, privileged white man who has the money and the resources and the fame to be really campaigning for environmentalism, which is part of the reason why I think that me and a lot of my peers are trying to change that narrative of like climate activism really being like a white, wealthy, like middle class person's like pursuit of like feeling better about themselves. Because as I said before, like this is an issue that's predominantly affecting people of color and also predominantly affecting people who are poor. And so because of that, I do think that it's really important to have women in positions of leadership in the climate movement, but also, of course, just generally. I mean, as a young woman, I think that I've, of course, experienced times in my life where I felt like I haven't been taken seriously, especially like with all of like the talks and different opportunities that I've been given. And so I really do hope that I can continue to do the work that I'm doing to open up opportunities for other young women who are interested in the work that I'm doing.
Got it. Wow. Let's see. I'd like to have like we were sitting on a couch having a conversation. I hate interviews. I'm just going to tell everybody out there, I truly hate interviews. I love to have conversations like we're all best friends sitting on a couch. Okay. Now, Sophia and Roxanne, did you know each other before today?
No.
First time. It's like act like we all know each other. Okay. So, one of the things for me, is if I was sitting on a couch, I'm just going to act like it's a digital couch right now, sitting back talking with you. Sophia, I sat with Greta when she came to New York. Like I wasn't just part of it. I marched with Greta, sat with her, Shea, Alexandra. There's another young man, you probably know him, Indian guy, I forgot his name. But I sat with all of them while they were chanting, while all of the other photographers and everything were just trying to beat each other up to get to Greta. And I want to say I'm so glad you're here because I want people to know there's people like Sophia, Alexandra, Shea, and everyone focuses on Greta. And while I'm grateful for that, there are so many other women, young women, older women that are out here standing for climate.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think that Shea actually came out with a piece where she was saying like stop calling me America's Greta Thunberg. And I think she was absolutely right. While I think that all the work that Greta has done is amazing, and I'm so grateful for the work she's done, and I definitely admire her a lot, I do think it's really important to share platforms that are given, especially when you have gained so much respect and so much like really fame and power, because I know so many young people who are putting their lives into this work day in and day out. And I do hope that they are recognized on larger platforms and that they get to share the experiences that they're having in opportunities such as this one.
I think the only thing is that sometimes, like when we marched, Sophia, okay, a lot of the young people thought it was a day off. They didn't even know why they were marching. So I think we have to remember to explain to each other. You have adults marching and it's like, oh yeah, I'm just marching because, my wife told me to do it, or my son told me to do it, or whatever. I think we have to just really understand why we do what we do, and that's where I want to kind of go to with you, Roxana and Sophia, understanding why we do what we do individually so that we can come together collectively. Because who we say we are inside, or the part of us that we ignore, as we were talking about earlier, the part of ourselves that we ignore can be the part that makes you feel like you have to over excel, can be the part that makes you feel like you have to get past that next woman, can be the part that says, oh, Sophie's there, I got to beat her at it. Roxanne is there, I got to beat her at it. And so human nature to some degree is competitive, okay? But you have a choice in how that competition goes. Okay? All right? You have a competition. You can take yourself out of competing, and that person can end up your best friend, because now there's no longer enough. You know what I do? I actually pray for people to be more successful than me, because then I don't have to deal with your jealousies. Okay, but that's still my stuff. If you notice, I said that I don't have to deal with it. So there's still a piece there that, I got to release. And so coming back to yourselves, who, like, I don't, you don't need to say this publicly, but within yourself, your private time, when you're meditating, when you're journaling, or when you do whatever you do to ground yourself, okay? That's the time to really get straight with who you are before you go out in the world. Also to ground yourself, because you're aware of who you are, you'll always have that impetus or that challenge. And that's part of life too, challenges so that we grow. But how do we really bring women together? Because right now I'm older than you guys, right? And if we were in a regular thing, I think it's me, Roxana, and then with you, Sophia. If we were all in a regular thing, it'd be like, oh my, who does she think she is? She's older. She's got this perspective. And then you might even say to Roxana, she thinks she's older too. I know more. We all go through that. And then the adults might be saying, oh my God, she's only 18. What does she know? We do that. And that is something that we have to honor each other, but we also have to honor that maybe Roxana, she's walked a walk more than 18 years. Okay? So there's some knowledge she has that we can't be self-entitled about. Okay? And then I have to say to Sophia, there's a walk that Sophia is walking that she has knowledge that I don't have, because I'm not in the time frame in which she's growing in. So, and then there's knowledge that I have. You both might say, wow. What I find often is that as young women, we want to get from the older women what their knowledge is, but we don't share as younger women our knowledge, because you have so much knowledge too, which brings us all to that we all have knowledge together. So how do we come together and share that with each other, at the same time owning that our journey is the stage we are at? And you can't rush that. The UN youth envoy, Janthama. She always gets mad at me because she says a 9-year-old could do what I do. I said, that's a lie. That's just a lie. They wouldn't even, because the mentality they would break to handle all that you're doing. They would break because they don't have that experience. A 9-year-old would literally break. 18, no, maybe not. But a 9-year-old, they don't have any life experience. They haven't lived through those other 9 years that are important to what that 18-year-old has lived. So I'd love to know your thoughts about that, how we as women respect each other at every age, on our journeys, empower one another. Y'all say what's on your mind.
Right. Well, I think where we started off a little earlier discussing what is missing in the music industry or any industry is like, we have to heal some of those wounds that haven't allowed us to really like break our own barriers, and having healthy boundaries, like it has to be equal, everybody in the space. And what I often hear with what you're talking about, the generational gap between the different groups, is also not the willingness not to listen. We've kind of learned these bad behaviors from all these other things that are going on out there. And one thing that we do at We Global is we do have committees and ambassadors from all walks of life and all ages, and we're being very intentional of bringing people from different age groups and from different spaces, and allowing and creating, and that's not allowing, everybody has the right, it's creating space for them to be able to level up that conversation. I think when, just like we're doing right here, it's just like we have different perspectives, we have different backgrounds, and really being willing to share, provide the space and do that. But I think that healing part internally is so important, putting yourself on check. That's one thing I know I work on myself and everything else. If I reacted in a certain way, or I always have my accountability partners, I'm like, did I act wrong in this space? And if I did, I have to hear it. I have a lot of team members that are really young in my group. We also intentionally try to bring everybody in, and I think when we do staff meetings and so forth, it's like, we want to hear your ideas. What I often find with the younger group is they're a little fearful sometimes to speak up because they haven't been given that space to do that. And also with the older group, sometimes we find, and I'm talking more like senior, and it's just like, they don't like, well, I've never been brought into this conversation. So one of our events, we wanted to make sure that we told people, bring your mother, bring your grandmother. We want to have these generational conversations. And that was part of that last discussion, is like how we're impacting each other, how what you all did, 50 years ago is impacting my life right now, and whatever we're doing moving forward. So it's really creating, I think, for me, is creating those spaces, coming from a solution-based place, and understanding where we're not going to agree with everything, just like with everything else. But if we can have those healthy boundaries, and be able to listen to each other, that's slowly what's working for us here. And I hope that people keep doing that moving forward, because we really need to work on that listening part. And like you said today, Gail, listening and learning is a good place for us to be. My truth is not yours, and I have to be able to listen to that.
I definitely agree. And I think that, sorry, is it okay if I go ahead?
No, please. Yeah.
I think that especially I've seen among young people, there definitely is this mentality where we're all in this rat race with young women, especially like it's only like one person can be the winner, like, oh, I have to be the best, et cetera, et cetera. And I honestly think that is a very harmful, toxic mentality, because the way I've always thought of it is like, I really am in a competition with myself. Like, I don't pit myself against other people and try to say, am I more successful than them, or are they more successful than me? Like, I don't feel bad about myself because I feel like someone else is achieving at a higher level. I actually, like you said, like, I love it when people are more successful than me, because that gives me something to aspire towards. Because like I said, like, I'm just trying to be the best version of myself that I know I can be, and to achieve to the highest extent that I know I can. And so I definitely think that that mentality and mindset of like self-growth, rather than I'm trying to reach like someone else's level, like I'm trying to be someone else that I'm not. I think that definitely that's something really important, not just like for women, but just in general. I think that that is just a mindset issue where we have to get away from this mindset of, as a society, we're competing against each other, because we really should be focused on ourselves and being the best version of ourselves that we can be.
Okay. And Gail, can I add something there? With just kind of the part of creating visibility for other women through our project, I was running an event, just kind of, you're doing the Gail, and you're like running around and trying to get things done. And yes, I had to speak, but I made it a point that I didn't want to be the person in the front. And I know that representation matters. So as a Latina, I always get asked, you have to be there, you have to put yourself there. Yes, to an extent, but I also feel like it's opening the space for others. And I've been questioned at events, especially here, because I'm very close to the tech world. So in the tech world, it's like, it's my picture everywhere, it's doing this. And if it's my event, you want to be able to do that. And I think in many times I haven't done that. And people are like, well, people don't really know. Like, it's really not about me. It's about that collective growth that we all need to have. And we all need to hear from each other. But it's really also when you're having that moment when things are not working in a relationship, and that you learn to communicate that, and that you have these ground rules, especially when you're collaborating as women. I think I've seen some pretty ugly things. I'm a consultant to a lot of domestic violence shelters, human trafficking programs. I've been around the movement for a while, and I love the things that I learned great from the movement. But the stuff that I've seen that's so toxic and repetitive, and we refuse to have these conversations. And sometimes when I work with men, I have to say, especially with my background with the music part, is like working with men, I would just tell you I didn't like something and I was done. Like, it was not something that I had to go back and keep revisiting, or that I'm going to hurt someone's feelings. And I want to be conscious of people's emotions. I mean, I work in that space, but I also want to make sure that we can have this conversation without you taking it to this wound. As long as I'm not disrespecting you, can we come to this agreement? And I feel like some of this stuff doesn't really happen, and it has been sometimes generational. I facilitate a lot of these meetings with some of my clients, and it just saddens me to see how many agencies built by and for women don't thrive sometimes because of this internal lack of communication or understanding of where people are. And there's ever for you a few years, some of this happens. So, just really putting it out there. We got to call ourselves on it.
Are you saying, Roxanne, more from an age point of view?
I'm going to say age is one, but sometimes it's just interacting as women. And sometimes it's also about understanding culture. So just like how I express myself may not be appropriate for others. And some of these other things that, that we see around here, especially in the States, like there's a lot of generational and cultural things that go into the space. And also learning that, when you're a leader, women can also be power hungry too. So we have to be careful with this.
Wait a minute. You see, why did you have to open up another can of worms? Okay?
That's what we're going to do today.
Yeah, wait a minute. Again, I want us to come, because I was where you are earlier this morning, and one of my mentors I had on, she had to remind me, again, that's when you don't know yourself. That space that we come from, when we say women X, I have to say that, how do I say this? And I'm talking about us as women. Is it okay if I get a little real here, guys? Is it okay, Sophia?
Yes.
Okay. Since we're going to go all out and have this real conversation here, the deal is often we as women, you see, so I love what you said, Roxanne and Sophia, but that cultural perspective, whenever, especially, so everyone knows I say UN everything. No, UN is not my life. UN does not dictate who I am. Why do I love the UN? Because it reminds me every day when I walk in that doggone building and I see all those flags, I'm not the only one that exists in this world. As a woman, as an American, as woman of color. It really makes me clear that I don't exist. There are other people that exist around me. So be about that. That's why I love the UN. The second reason I love the UN is because people don't understand the UN. One thing I'm tired of, and Roxanne, you know this, and Sophia, you know this. There are people that just want to get to the UN. Okay? And the people that are there, and yes, y'all know I'm some of your friends. There are people who are at the UN, they use the same cluster of people all the time. You know that, Roxanne. Okay? It's the same group. And let me say this to you. Just like any group and any clique, it'll leave one day. Okay? Because we all get older and we all move on. When it comes to younger and older, I always say that to Sophia, Roxanne, or myself, when there's someone I'm talking to who's 90 years old or 70 or 60, they'll tell me, you're going to be here one day, Gail. So they're right, because I will be there one day. And so that makes me respect every person at every age, okay? Because I was either there or I will be there. And the point that I want to say about us as women is culturally, if you were born here, but let's say you grew up in a Chinese family, okay? You have a certain environment, even though you're a Chinese American, there's a certain environment you grew up in. Maybe your parents are from China, but you grew up with certain mannerisms and things like that. So someone could say something to you and it be disrespectful, but to the average American, it might not be disrespectful because they didn't grow up in that household. We have to be culturally sensitive, but also realize that the way in which we communicate business is business. So as an example, I have a lot of friends from Italy. Okay, they can seem like they are don't have a sensitive bone in their body to some people. Okay, because a rock is a rock, water is water. That's just it. Why are you getting upset about it? Life is too short. That's the lens sometimes in which they look at. When I've dealt with Thailand, when I've been there, Thailand is a country that no one yells, no one screams. So when you get there, if I was talking at the level, or Roxana or Sophia, you were talking at the level that you're talking now, they would be like, why are you screaming? You don't have to yell at me. Because when they get upset, they just say what they have to say. They don't keep going. So we have to be culturally respectful, but we also have to be respectful to one another's generations. And Roxanne, I'm going to finish here and have you guys just please come in. Just because, you see, I said this earlier, Sophia, if you're working with someone older, that person older may be fearful that you could get their job. Why? Not because they're insecure, but because they're taking care of their kids at home like you, and they don't know how they're going to pay their rent. Okay? So if it's someone who's just come out with college loans, you're just dealing with a college loan. This person's got a mortgage, put their people through college and everything. So you still have your life to pay it off. Roxana, you might be feeling like, oh, I have to say this a certain way or whatever. Older people see something that you may not see. Just like you might see something that Sophia may not see. She may not want to deal with it, but you can see it. The problem is, it's still their journey, and we have to learn to let people have their journey, okay? When I work with people, if I don't feel like something is going right, I'll just pull out and say, look, I'm going to let you make that mistake yourself. Because if I make that mistake together with them, I may be affecting my other partners. That's a different mindset. I'll say, you know what, no matter how much money it's worth, you go ahead and you go down that road, but I can't because I represent other people who are all ages. So I'd love to know your thoughts on what, I've shared. I did talk a little bit, but I wanted to get a perspective in from what Roxanne has said. And I'd really like to start out with Sophia to see, what are you hearing, Sophia? What's there for you? What are you seeing for yourself and the solutions that you see in general?
I mean, I think that there is this mentality that young people see this as a very you guys versus us, young people versus old people, which I would honestly disagree with. I mean, I think it definitely varies person to person, but at least with the people that I work with, the young women that I work with in the climate movement, I mean, we're very much open to working with adults. We love working with adults. And I also would push back on the idea that I'm a threat to a job. I mean, I haven't even I just started college, you know what I mean? All of the work that I've been doing is very much pro bono, just things that I'm doing because I'm passionate about this work. And so I do think that there would have to be a certain degree of disrespect for an adult to view me in that manner, rather than just focusing on trying to realize that young people are the next generation. We are inheriting this world that is fundamentally flawed, and we really want to change it. And so we would definitely appreciate for the older generation to work with us to make the transition more seamless and to also give us the tools that we need to succeed.
Sophia, I just had to say something to you. I want to clarify something. I'm not saying that you are a threat to an older person. I'm saying they may view it that way.
Yeah, I'm saying for them to view me as a threat, I think would be, at least in my mind, a bit bizarre, since I am only 18, but to each their own.
No, but here's why they might view it as a threat. Let's say you're on the advisory committee, right? They're getting paid X amount of money. Let's get really real here. Adults will see young people and use that. You understand what I'm saying? Oh, they're young. I can get her in because she's doing it pro bono, but this adult, I'm paying X amount of money. Okay? Or Sophia's coming in. She knows some of the newer stuff. You know what I mean? This adult's been working here and they don't. So the other thing I wanted to clarify, that's, you're trying to take care of your kids. You're not thinking about that. It's not really that Sophia is a threat. Is that there's someone new coming in who's younger. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my parents, like their friends, they're always worried, like, oh, am I not technologically sufficient enough? Like, you're going to replace me. I definitely think that is a natural worry, but I think that's different than feeling threatened by a young person who's doing pro bono work just out of like their own, like the kindness of their heart, or just because it's something that they're passionate about, at least in the work that I'm doing.
But that's your world. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the world you're living in and that you're coming from, Sophia. Their world is, how am I going to make it? So they may not even be able, that's the part you have to understand. And that's where I say the journey. You see, you haven't, just like I won't understand a lot of things that you're dealing with, okay? Because you're growing up at a different time, okay? So that's how I learned from you, but I'm an adult who's open to learning from you. Some adults are just in there trying to, it's not that they're not open to learning, they don't even have the space to learn because when they get home, they've got to take care of a baby. They've got to take care of maybe the husband or the wife. You know what I mean? They're dealing with their, and so though that may not be your problem, again, remember one day you will be there. Not you could be wealthy, but still have all those things to deal with. So the point that I just wanted to say that, and the other point I wanted to say to you is, it's not what you get from us that we need to teach you. We need to teach each other.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is a intergenerational conversation. I learn from older people, they learn from me, but I think that we're kind of talking in circles around two different issues. I'm just being completely blunt.
Too, so this is great.
In terms of the work that I'm doing, this is like an unemployed advisory position, and then me founding my own nonprofit. All of the work that I'm doing is pro bono climate activism. That activism and like career path, in my eyes, are very different. So I don't think at this point in my career that has not begun, I pose a threat to any adults. If I was graduating college and I was entering the job market, I completely understand that. I mean, my aunt recently lost her job and she's been struggling to re-enter the job market because she is viewed by employers as too old. And of course, that is a matter of like, you need an income in order to be able to survive. And so I completely understand that. I'm just saying, in my personal situation with the climate movement and with like young women in the climate movement, I don't think this is a matter of like job prospects for us. This is us like doing work that we think we need to do in order to ensure a livable future for our planet.
But here's the thing, I'm going to be completely blunt with you. And this is great. See, this is the kind of real dialogue we all need to have. No, really, Sophia, I have so much respect for you for saying what's on your mind, because this is the kind of real dialogue we need to have as women, as people, where we can agree to disagree and learn from each other's perceptions. It's not about right or wrong. And for me, right or wrong doesn't exist. It's really about us getting into what there is and how we see through our lens. And Roxanne, just give me 1 second. I just want to say, in terms for me, it's not about me, okay? See, what I had to learn is I couldn't make this about me, okay? I have certain views and everything when I step into the UN or other organizations that I can't have it be about my view. I have to take a look at the whole objectivity of everything, okay? Now, with that said, you can say that, but don't take this the wrong way. You don't get to say how people view something. I don't get to say your view. I have no right. Okay? And you don't get to say how someone else is viewing something. We don't know their life experiences. We don't know what they're dealing with. And so what I'm going to say to you is, Sophia, is that that's where the compassion comes in. That's where the understanding comes in. Because the compassion of understanding that someone is dealing with, it's not about Sophia. It's about maybe they wanted to do that. Maybe they had the idea to do that, and the person that had you come on didn't even respect them enough to bring them in, but they brought someone else in. That's where I'm coming from. Not about Sophia, but Sophia is the conduit in which the projection is coming from by that other woman. She's scared. She doesn't know what to do. Roxanne, I know you got a lot to say, so I'm going to shut up.
Well, I'm just gonna say, why are we even talking about the threat when we're so used to the small pie? Like, I'm like, I hear you what you're saying, but my point is like, we're
I
so
love it. I love it. You just made a
dynamic that we're so used to. Like, okay, there's only so many slots. Why are there so many slots? One of my points, when we started, that I thought that we were going to do like individual sessions about our topics. And so, but my point today was, how do we disrupt and reconstruct women's leadership from its root? And this is it. If there's a system that exists and it doesn't function, why do we keep working within it? Like, and if we have, and why is it always one way or the other when there's solutions? These institutions have been around for a very long time, whether it's a job or whether it's something like the UN that we're discussing. I know there's been a lot of work to evolve some of this work, but we need to continue to do more. And when you do say, okay, well, maybe I'm not a threat financially because this is my own job and organizations. I've been in spaces at your age and older where I've been doing volunteer work and people have been hating because they didn't go for whatever was holding them back, because they thought that as women they couldn't have space because whatever thing you may have. Why do we always gravitate to that? Well, we should be really looking at, how can I create for me what I need to in this space? And if not, what do I need to do to open that space for others? And really have, this ongoing conversation about that. And especially if it comes down to money, like when it does come down to that, Sophia, not right now, this second, but say it comes down later, then at that point, we really need to be thinking about, okay, well, if I need to move on from this space, if I'm older and I need to move on to this other space, I've seen people hold on to dear life for all the reasons that Gail has mentioned, and many more, right, that we may not know because we don't know the individual. But moving forward is like, why do I have to be stuck here if I have to move on into another space? I've been tasked with that many times too, and sometimes it's time to go and create that for other people. But the other thing is, because we've been told, oh, this is how far you go, I know people in big corporations that they've been trying to get a management job forever, and then they'll have, mostly women and women of color at some point too, so they don't move up in that stage. Why not create that space for this woman to move here? And you could be moving on to another company and doing your own thing. Why always the limitation? And I feel like a lot of the times, especially for women's issues, we're always operating from the space of lack. I mean, we're talking about women's organizations, and I've heard this even in the UN and other spaces, they're always the least funded. They're the smallest group. Why are we at the decision table pulling and moving that money where we really need to be moving forward? And I hope that's what we do today here, that we start having these dialogues, because we shouldn't be at this space always of lack, especially when we're the ones leading and promoting movement. I'll stop.
No, but you know what, Roxanne, what I love about what you said, and that was, I think you saw the point that I was trying to get to, Sophia, was that it is that women sometimes look through that small space. And the whole thing is, I was talking to one of my friends earlier today on the Women's Day here. She's from Europe, and she was saying that we need to be around women where they walk into a space of opportunities and they're not saying their name, but they're saying their friend's name. Okay? See, that's a woman who can stand on her feet and be clear who should. All of us have insecurities. I don't care who the hell you are. Okay? We all got some with the bullshit of excuse my expression. Oops, sorry. With the bullshit of oh, this is too small. But the point that I was coming from is, what I'm trying to have everyone see here is, when someone is trying to make a living, okay, it's not that they're playing small or just looking at the small pie too, Roxanne. They're just focused on trying to make ends meet for their home. Right. And that's even whether they're middle class, upper middle class, it does not matter. Like Sophia just said, her aunt lost her job, okay? Someone who's just lost their job, and if they're in their 40s and their 50s or even late 30s and they have a family, they're sitting there more concerned about, am I going to keep this job? That's the place that I'm talking about. And they don't have to be insecure. They don't have to be looking from a place of lack. It's just maybe the market's volatile. There are factors. We're human beings. And that's the thing I think we have to also own too. When you can own your own humanity, and there's not a woman on this panel here, from Sophie to you, Roxanne, to myself, that we are so ironclad, strong, cemented foundation in our bodies that we don't go through some kind of insecurity, some kind of something up and down. There's no way. So we all have our shit. And because we do, we have to also be open that other people have their shit. And that's just real, okay? All right. And so, as professional as I am, excuse the vernacular, the point that I'm getting at is it is so important for us to support each other, not argue to support each other. It's, Annie said it today. She said it shouldn't have to hurt to shift. It shouldn't have to be hard to create. We make it that way. So that's why no matter what we talk about here, the change begins within you, Sophia, you, Roxanne, and myself. So I should be able to walk into the UN and go, you know what? Sophia is here. She does a damn good job. Not worried about that. But if I'm in a situation where I'm dealing with, I've got 10 kids and I've got a husband who's not doing well or whatever, bottom line is, I'm going to say, hey, Sophie's good, but I got to take care of Gail over here at the side. That doesn't mean that I don't care about Sophia. That doesn't mean I don't care about Roxana. But see, when I've been very blessed to meet beautiful women like you. And no, I'm dead serious. I've been very blessed, okay? But when I'm not in that space personally, if I'm in my own space, I will meet women that reflect what I'm not willing to look at. And a woman said this to me one day. She said, if there's a woman over there, doesn't matter her age, and we have our own cliques, and we're sitting over there, we don't know that by ignoring her might just add more to the rejection that she's feeling. Mm-hmm. So just think about that, everybody. That doesn't matter any doggone age, So I'm going to end my piece there, and I would love to know, Sophia and Roxana, what are your last words? What one solution or two, whatever the heck you want to give, and Roxana, would you give in moving this blueprint forward?
So today I actually had prepared 9 points for us to go over, and I think we've touched upon them here throughout. So I'm just going to read them off if that's good with you there, Gail. So
we don't have a lot of time because we have someone waiting. But if you
all right, so I'll just do the top three. Is we definitely need to do the healing our wounds. We have to build collectively. We have to work beyond the systems change work. If the system doesn't work, we have to find other solutions and really be solution driven and able to take action and not just this conversation. So where does this lead after this? This is all great, but we have to take those steps and that we bring everybody with us. So nice meeting you there too, Gail, Sophia. I'm so excited to hear your work, and eventually when we get offline, maybe we can chat a little bit more. And that's my tone of action to even work directly with you and see what we can do.
So Roxana, I'd love for you to, I just see that we have a little bit more time. Can you read the rest of it if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. So I went into the systems change and beyond systems change work. So the next point was number 4, solutions-based and option seekers. Instead of just coming with the problem, let's look for these solutions. Owning our responsibilities. We've talked about that. What do I bring to the table? No is not our final destination or limitation. If they tell me no, well, why no? And let's figure out what the next steps are and what will function. Redesign from our grounded heart values. We talked about this in holding space. Women in the climate change, for example, like Berta Cáceres, have lost their lives. So we have to be able to figure out what is valued for us and how we can represent and support those that are taking on this work. Next part is equal value is not just my salary. It's also my personal power. How do I view myself, how I represent myself, and how others do the same for me. And last is that cycle of I'll call it a self-cleaning cycle, where it's thoughts, words, collaborations, visibility, accountability, and actions all over again. And every single time we do something, we have to go through that cycle again because nothing's perfect. And we're at a time that we need a lot of change, especially now with this pandemic. But I'll stop there.
Okay. And Sophia?
My main piece would just be that I think it's important for people to really focus on self-growth and doing the best that they can do instead of viewing other people as threats and as competition. Of course, I can't speak for anyone. I can't speak for how other people feel, but my opinions are informed by my experiences. And I really do believe that as women, we should want other women to succeed. I know that it's really important to share your platforms. I'm always trying to make opportunities for other young people, other young women who I think have really been doing the work. I mean, just today I organized a global youth consultation with the UN to really hear from other young people from all around the world about what they wanted the UN to do about climate action. And so not even just as young women, but like as women in general and as people in general, who really need to get beyond this like me focus and focus on improving our like world just as on a society level and making sure that we're leaving the next generation in good hands.
Thank you. I'm just going to say one thing. I want to thank you both for sharing yourself, sharing your heart, and giving of yourself. One thing I'm going to say is this: solutions are great. Okay, I love what you said, Roxana, about the fact of what's going to happen after this. Great, your blueprint, great. I love, Sophia, the part that you said of getting out of it being about self and competition and all that, and let's move forward, which all goes back to, if we sum it up, solutions. I always like to focus on the solution, because when you look at a solution, you'll know where the problem came from.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't need to focus on no more problems. And I don't think you or anyone else in the world needs to. And I love what Sophia said, and I hope everyone heard Sophia well when she said not coming from competition and all that, which goes back to, Roxanne, what you said about not coming from the space of lack. Okay? Because lack, competition lives in lack. And so, So anyway, this is a conversation we've had, and I think all three of us could talk to keep going, because I don't think we're talkers here. You've got three women here who are doers, and they be who they do. What be, have, and do. That's what you have here. And I say adios. If you just stay in the background for a second, that'd be great.
Awesome.